Manchester, New Hampshire, in the year 1870, was not a city that happened by accident. It was a city that was decreed. While the rest of New England grew in tangled webs of cow paths and colonial trails, Manchester was a testament to the square and the compass. It was a grid of red brick and granite, carved into the banks of the Merrimack River with mathematical precision. This was the domain of the Amoskeag Manufacturing Company, the largest textile empire on the planet. And at the center of this empire stood one man, Ezekiel A. Straw. To the public, he was the governor of New Hampshire and the agent of Amoskeag. But in the quiet halls of Washington Lodge No. 61, he was a brother. The Masons believe in the perfect ashlar, the idea that a man, through labor and discipline, can be squared into a perfect stone for the great architect's temple. In 1870, Manchester was that stone. Every mill, every canal, and every tenement was part of a grand design, but the problem with a perfect machine is that when one gear slips, the entire system screams. And in 1870, the gears were about to slip. The first test came on the night of July 9th. A spark, small, insignificant, and anonymous, found purchase in the heart of the business district. By 2:30 a.m., the sky over the Merrimack was a bruised orange. The fire didn't just take buildings, it took the symbol of the city's intellectual soul, the Masonic Temple. Imagine the scene, thousands of people lining the streets as the temple's roof collapsed. For the members of the lodge, this wasn't just a loss of property, it was the destruction of their sacred space, their records, and their symbolic tools. But watch what happened next. While the smoke was still rising on July 10th, the brothers did not despair. They did not wait for government aid or charity. Under the leadership of men like Straw and Aradus Blood, the Masons invoked the law of relief. They met in secret, pooled their vast industrial resources, and decided that the new temple would be grander, stronger, and more imposing than the last. They were proving that the Brotherhood was fireproof. However, as the hammers began to fall on the new temple, a different kind of disaster was brewing in the locomotive shops, one that fire couldn't explain. But if 1870 was a warning, October 15, 1891 was the reckoning. In the heart of the Jefferson Mill sat a mechanical god, the Big Jumbo. It was a twin-engine marvel, capable of 2,000 horsepower, driving the looms of the world's largest textile plant. At 10 a.m., the rhythm of the city changed. A governor belt slip slipped. Without the resistance of the looms, Big Jumbo began to race. The massive iron flywheel, 30 feet across and weighing 60 tons, began to spin beyond the limits of physics. It reached a critical velocity, a point where the centrifugal force exceeded the strength of the iron itself. Then, the scream. The flywheel didn't just break, it detonated like a massive shrapnel shell. Huge chunks of cast iron, some weighing several tons, were hurled upward through 3 brick floors. The roof of the engine house was obliterated. One piece of the wheel was thrown across the canal, landing in the middle of a street. In an instant, the pride of Manchester's engineering had become a whirlwind of jagged metal. The air was filled with scalding steam and the smell of ozone and hot oil. The iron horse of the mills hadn't just died, it had torn the building apart. The devastation was absolute. 3 workers were killed instantly. Ada L. Cram, Mary Kane, and Emma J. Corcoran. They weren't engineers, they were weavers on the floors above, caught in the path of the iron shrapnel. But for the Brotherhood, the tragedy struck home when the steam cleared. Among the rubble was the body of the man who tried to stop it, Herman J. Shafter, the engineer. Shafter didn't run. He died at his post, his hand likely still on the throttle, trying to vent the steam and save the mill. In the lore of the lodge, Shafter's sacrifice mirrors the legend of the master builder, who would rather die than betray his duty. The Masons of Washington Lodge and Lafayette Lodge saw in Shafter the ultimate perfect ashlar, a man whose character held firm even when the iron failed. Just as in 1870, the missing pieces of Big Jumbo became a local obsession. To this day, it is said that fragments of that 1891 flywheel remain embedded deep in the silt of the Amiskea Canal, a hidden iron monument to the day the machine turned on its creators. The explosion of 1891 was more than an industrial accident. It was a fracture in the city's soul. But look closely at the recovery. Just as they had after the fire of 1870, the architects of recovery moved with a precision that the public rarely saw. Within days of the Big Jumbo's scream, the looms were quiet, but the lodges were active. The Brotherhood, the men who owned the mills, the men who engineered the engines, and the men who walked the floors, functioned as the invisible mortar holding the great ashlar of Manchester together. They understood that in a city of steam and iron, the only thing stronger than the machine was the bond between the men who built it. By the turn of the century, the Jefferson Mill was repaired, the Masonic Temple on Elm Street was the center of the state's political power, and the memory of the Iron Horse's scream had become local legend. But the mystery remains. The 60-ton fragments of Big Jumbo from 1891 were never fully accounted for. They became part of the city's geological record, fragments of a violent past buried beneath the canals, under the cobblestones, and deep in the silt of the Merrimack. We leave the missing iron to the river, and the brothers to their rest. For in Manchester, the work never truly ends. It only changes form. The gavel falls, the day is done, the master calls his weary son. Though iron shatters, steam may fly, the mason's soul shall never die. By level, plumb, and square we stand, in this our granite sculpted land. Though fire may burn and boilers burst, the brothers' bond shall be the first. The column breaks, the work is stayed, beside a river, lo, he's laid. But from the ash and twisted steel, the great design he shall reveal.